Hello, and welcome back to the Fae Banner Review, where we talk about ways to cope about the new units and effects that continue to push the limits of the game and our patience. Before we continue on, however, I must comment on something very important in regards to the last banner review video. It had come to my attention that the audio snippets that played every 10 seconds were very taxing for many, and it is clear that I made a grave error in putting them in the video. My goal is not only to have the best line graph in the community, but to entertain. And based on the comments left on my video, it is clear that I only achieved one of those things. So after taking all the feedback into account, I have decided that moving forward, every video will now abruptly end if I so much as utter the word, hey. No, but for real, it won't happen. It was a one-time thing, I promise. Today, we have a brand new Emblem banner in the form of Emblem Sigurd, which means he no longer ties with Reinhardt for the most represented Jugdral character in Fire Emblem Heroes, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, after watching the trailer, I wish that wasn't the case, but I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. And I am aware that many are not as pleased about the lack of line graph representation for these types of banners, so to remedy this, I have come up with the perfect solution. Instead of having a line graph that may or may not be a line graph at the end of the day for these single new unit banners, we will be ranking them based on the brand new small line graph that may or may not be small at the end of the day. Today's ranking will be based on how many spaces Emblem Sigurd can move in a single player phase, and if that number so happens to go above 10, then the count will roll over. And it would be so awesome if you player phase the subscribe button and like and subscribe to the channel, so that I won't have to send Emblem Sigurd over to your house and force you.
I will see it done.
So Emblem Sigurd,
Leave it to me.
I saw Reagan's Canto maximum of 5 and told myself they would never drop a 5 movement cav. And then they dropped a 5 movement cav with Canto 3. Why do we put up with this? Okay, what else does this weapon do? Let's see. Holy War Spear is a slaying Canto 3 lance that grants stats, true stats that works with AoEs, stats but less on the foe, and HP stats after combat. And he gets 2 additional movement at the start of the turn, which we just mentioned. A movement buff of 2 instead of 1 is kinda crazy, because that's basically 2 times the amount of extra movement and like 5 times the amount of movement an armor has, which is a lot more than your typical amount of movement. And this may seem really bad on its own, but trust me, I can make you feel worse about its existence. A 2 movement buff is one thing, but the worst part about this might be the wording of the effect stating unit moves 2 extra spaces, because there is a good chance that this isn't affected by stall, and it is completely stall proof. Stall only reduces the movement if the unit in question has a unit moves 1 extra space bonus, which is not the same as unit moves 2 extra spaces, because 2 is not the same as 1. If anything, 2 is just more than 1/1, or double the amount of 1, which is 2. If you wanted to be even funnier about it though, you could copy Gallop off Sigurd from Brave Crom, and then you could have 2 5 movement lance cavalry with Canto 3 thanks to the emblem ring that Sigurd comes with. At that point, throw on Dagger for Pathfinder and you basically cover the entire map. Hell, you may not even need her because of the amount of move they each get, which I don't even know why they thought this was fine. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped a tier 4 stall ploy really soon that messes with all these movement shenanigans before it gets too overboard. Although if they make an upgrade for it, can it also kill like all non-special Gale Forces like Felix and Crom? Can it also kill all the unpierceable damage reduction that we have in the game? Can it also kill every unit I personally struggle with? Sigurd also has a Pure F special, which is fairly unique as he is the 4th Emblem hero to get a Pure F special. The special is as close as you could get to mimicking Emblem Sigurd and Engage, except instead of holding back with it, they said, wait a minute, I got a worse idea. And that's how we end up with Override. Override is a 3 cooldown area of effects special that hits 9 tiles, has damage reduction, and grants Gale Force after combat if Sigurd hits more than 1 foe with his AoE.
Killing myself.
The special scaling is already one thing, with it dealing 50% more than the average AoE, but it also stacks with his weapon, which gives him 20% extra true damage based on his defense. Maybe it needs to do this much damage because Breath of Life 4 exists, but because it's based on a defense check, there's a good chance the foe is just not healing much of anything at the start of combat given his stat line. It's also probably why he came with Fatal Smoke 4, so that it's all but secure, but we haven't gotten there yet, so that's spoilers. Forget I mentioned that just now. Sigurd also comes with a brand new B slot in Momentum, which is fairly unique as he is the 4th Emblem hero to get a brand new B slot. It debuffs, it has a guaranteed follow-up, it gives special jumps up to -2 based on spaces moved, and grants up to 20 true damage per attack, which is included with AoEs. It's actually really cool because the special jump works with AoEs, which means we have a lot more viable nuking options now. So, crisis averted. Although this means some of my prior investments may not hold up anymore, which means I might have to pull for newer units again. So never mind, crisis continued.
Steve.
And of course, there's the big point of contention with the Emblem Ring effect that most people only really care about. The first one gave out slaying with a damage penalty for brave hitters, the second one gave out unpierceable damage reduction against ranged foes, and the third one made me want to commit Battle Bahala. So how could IS possibly top the Emblem Ring effect this time around? Well, the answer is quite simple. Just put more effects in it. Emblem Sigurd's Emblem effect not only gives out true damage, but it also gives out flat Canto 2 or 3, depending on the range of the user, and extra movement at the start of the turn, on top of the basic Emblem Ring effect every ring comes with. Do you know it's been less than a year since Marth's Ring? Okay, maybe it's my fault for assuming the emblem effects wouldn't go balls to the wall, because I definitely made that mistake with attuned skills, and inheritable skills, and duo buttons, and harmonic buttons, and arcanes. Well, arcanes are kind of whatever. It's not even just one extra addition. It has like 4 effects in the entire ring total. That's just insane. Although, despite how baffling of a jump this is for a gimmick that isn't even a year old, there's no follow-up to that. I'm just baffled about it. I will say, though, that even with all the effects tacked onto Sigurd Emblem's effect, I think Celica's Ring might still be the strongest one, and that's because 5-space warping is obscene for basically any single unit. Sure, the new ring may have a lot of Canto, and some true damage, and some extra movement. There's no follow-up to that, I'm just listing the effects. For what it's worth, it will be a really appreciated emblem ring for a lot of melee cabs because most can now have the same range as some of the newer melee cabs with a slightly weaker Canto, and by slightly weaker, I mean it's still Canto 3, so is that really so weak? Maybe slightly weaker than Canto Distance, but it's not really that noticeable. Units like Deer Dude, Spring Carla, Brave Crom, of course Brave Crom because it's Brave Crom, and Brave Crom doesn't age for some reason because he's Brave Crom. They'll all like that. Even Legendary Nana, who's due for a remix soon, isn't so bad now with this effect, so at least there's hope for more units to do something now than they were able to prior to this edition. I think a lot of melee caps are in a good place now. And then there's Fatal Smoke 4. That's probably not a relevant talking point now, is it?
I'm Sigurd.
And now that we've gone over the one new unit, I think it's time we rank him on the small line graph that may or may not be small at the end of the day. Although I will say the amount of spaces he can move in one player phase is anything but small. And because of that, he will be receiving the first ever 3 out of 10 on the small line graph. Not a particularly good score for any banner, but his score rolled over because he can move 13 spaces in a single player phase. Of course, this doesn't mean he's a bad unit, but it might be more convenient if you thought he was, so there would be less of him and his emblem effect around. And speaking of which, for the portion of my audience wondering if this banner is worth pulling on, I have quite the answer for you. Probably not yet. The emblem effect is good, and Sigurd sure is a unit, but you may want to see what the upcoming Halloween banner entails first, and whether the next banner he appears on will have a better color share than this one. However, just know that if you do decide to summon for him immediately, that you have until Chapter 5 to prepare for the worst that's yet to come, and you'll know exactly when they come.
Here I come!